Hey, welcome back to What's Wrong with This Picture with Dennis Guillaume. We're talking today about processing your pictures. And where are we at now? We just looked at some photos before. We're back here to this photo of...
And we're still in camera raw.
We're still in camera raw here.
As an example of what you can do, in this case in Photoshop.
All right.
But in a number of other pieces of software have similar kinds of changes that you can make to your picture.
This is a very cool program because it allows you to see the things that you can do wrong. And in the error areas, it's got well, the histogram is really the cool part, I think. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, let's look at the histogram. One of the things that we can do, we talked in this first segment about all these sliders down here, and now we're just going to demonstrate what a couple of them do. For example, we can change the temperature of the picture, which simply means I can make it cooler and turn on more blue, or I can drag the slider the other way and make it warmer and get more yellows and that sort of thing in the picture. And at the place where our photographer actually shot it was right nicely in the middle.
Right.
Another thing that we can do.
So this one didn't need any real correction.
No,
at that
not
point.
really. I think he did an excellent job in the first place. But if we were going to show it where it was not quite as well balanced, I could take the exposure slider here and I can move it to the right, in which case I'm going to overexpose. And you see what happens in the histogram. All this stuff piles up on the right-hand side, and it's getting chopped off or clipped. Okay. And what that means is we're losing information because we overexpose. And if I were to click on this little triangle up here to expose what's overblown, you see what happens. All of those red spots are tags that tell me that those things have lost their detail because of overexposure.
And they don't become part of the picture. They're just for you to see.
Right. That helps me to see where the detail is gone.
Right. Right.
All right. So now if I go back, well, let me leave that on for a second. If I go back and I take the exposure slider and I put it back closer to where it should be, you see these things disappear. And now there's a little bit of some left right there.
Right. Yeah.
But that's not bad, and that's not something you go chasing in a normal situation.
Right.
Below that, you see a recovery slider. Now here's a case where if I was really nitpicky about it and want to get rid of that, I could take the recovery slider and I could move it to the right, and you see those little red spots went away.
Now what is that? What did that do?
That artificially recovered the detail that was missing from that cloud. In other words, there was still a little bit of stuff there, and it borrowed from pixels around it and it filled it in.
So it sort of made it up as it went along.
Yeah, it helps to recover what isn't really there.
I gotcha. Okay.
Right? Now, we also have a thing called fill light, which if you didn't get good color balance in front, you can actually fill. You see how it brightens the whole thing?
Oh, so it brightens especially the dark areas.
Yeah, and it'll kind of eventually wash them out too.
Right.
So we don't use fill light unless there's really something wrong.
Gotcha.
Blacks is one of those sliders that helps you to get detail. Now you see I left the arrow over here on, which shows where detail in the shadows is blown away, and by putting up too much black I can actually blow away detail that was there
at the dark end.
In the dark end. So we don't want to do that in this particular case.
No, but that black does help a picture pop out. We talked about that in that last segment. It can help,
especially
with underexposed photos.
Right, actually overexposed
photos.
If I were to overexpose this again and then take black, I can actually start to pull some of that back in, but I'm going to lose the dark shadows no matter what.
So when you've got a good shot, it's sort of like don't mess with it, right?
That's you know, there's no sense in fixing what's not broken. Somebody said that once, I think.
Oh, okay.
So I'm gonna leave that at 0. Brightness and contrast again is pretty well known. Here's this clarity thing. I'm gonna get rid of this. We have some black blown out here now. I'm going to get rid of this clarity thing right here and move it to the right, and you see, you don't see much happen, but if you look closely, you see it just get a little bit crisper in where the edges of images are. So I'm going to leave that, in this case, in this one, back to 0.
Right.
Vibrance adds some density to the colors.
Right.
You see the sky turn a little bit more blue.
Right.
It's almost like I used a polarizing filter make that blue deeper.
Gotcha.
But if I didn't have one with me, I can get some of that effect by using vibrance, and then saturation just messes with all the colors.
I've found with my little point and shoot that I almost always add a little saturation.
Yeah,
because it tends to be just a little undersaturated, but I can pull that up. And again, I can go too far, of course. But
right, and in some cases, if you use vibrance instead, you'll accomplish it without messing with all the pixels.
Right.
You just mess with the ones you want to
Oh, okay,
increase.
gotcha.
All right, so then
don't mess with the pixels. If you upset the pixels,
all right,
hell to pay.
Now we're going to sharpen. And here, this one hasn't been sharpened. It doesn't need a lot of sharpening, actually. In fact, it's quite possible that our photographer, Randy, did a little sharpening in his software before he sent this to us. But normally, I'll pick a number between 50 and 70, and you see what happened?
I think you went 701 there.
Oh, 701. Well, that's good. 701, you see what happened there? Everything is way too sharp.
Right.
So I'm going to go back to 70, and that even made a lot of sharpening happen because the default was 25. You see what's happening in this area here. Look at the gravel. Now, if I go back and I make that, say, 70 instead, did you see it brighten up a little bit?
Yeah, right.
All right, so it puts a little edge and a little sharpening on the picture as a whole. Now, if I had created noise as a result of that, if I had said, well, let's see, if I can get up here a little bit there, I almost can see some noise in there. You see how this looks a little granular in the water? Yeah. I could use luminance and drag that over, and you see how that goes away.
Oh, okay.
All right. So I can balance the amount of grain or noise that might appear in the picture when I sharpened it by pulling the luminance over, and the same thing is true of color if you've got color noise going on.
Right.
So going back here, what we've done is we've made some adjustments in this picture, and I think what I'm going to have to do is move back a little bit so we can see the picture.
There you go.
At this point, what we can do then is normally we would open the picture in Photoshop or in one of the programs that you might be using. In this case, Photoshop. I would open it in Photoshop to do anything else like cropping and so on that I might want to do. And cropping would be something that would help us to find perhaps a picture in a picture. For example, I might say, I like this picture the way it is, but if I were going to crop something out of the center of this thing and focus on the mountains, I might find another picture within that picture that was also usable, especially if we've got enough megapixels in the camera that we're shooting, that allows us to make a decent sized picture of a portion of the normal picture.
Keeping in mind, as you zoom in and try to expand a segment of a photo, you are enlarging the pixels, and you may end up with something that doesn't look as good.
Well, you run out of you're running out of pixels at some point, because when you take this picture that's shot, we'll say at 6 or 8 or 10 megapixels, and you take a small portion out of it. Now the question is, how big can I make that before I run out of sufficient numbers of pixels, and it becomes what we call pixelated.
Right. Okay.
So, in any case, that's a little bit more about how to make adjustments to a picture once you've taken it and downloaded it to your computer. The next thing we want to talk about is to look at some of these really nice pictures that our viewers sent, and to have a little discussion about what we like about those.
Perfect. So stay with us. We'll be right back. We're going to talk about Tom and Randy's photos in just a minute. For more TV like this from the world of RVs, head to rvnn.tv.